Hey guys, welcome back. It's part 9 and we're just going to focus on crouching. That's it. There's probably a little bit more to consider when it comes to crouching than you think, but I'm going to show you all that. And the big thing about this video is showing you how you can cleanly kind of swap between collision masks and stuff like that. Again, it's mostly geared towards just the crouching mechanic, but should give you a little bit of insight into maybe how to handle some other kind of things that you want to do for yourself. Anyways, this one doesn't need a long intro, so let's get going. Okay, crouching time. My candle went out. No, it's too low. I guess I can just hold it to my face while I record so I can smell it. I'm just now realizing this thing smells exactly like a Scream mask my sister had when we were kids for Halloween. Wow, that's a real memory being summoned. Whoa. Okay, crouching. First, we need crouching sprite. And I should have provided that to you already in like part 2 or whatever of this, but I still need to add it to my game. So if we forgot how to do that, we're gonna go to create sprite. I'm gonna call it S player crouch like this. Edit image, go to my image up here, import images, and find your Maria platformer sprites. Where is it? Big crouch. Here we go. What? Yeah, just what? I did that wrong. What option did I press on? Oh yeah, not import images, import strip image. I mean, it doesn't matter because it's a single frame, but this is how you do it correctly. Here you go. And that just needs to be big as this. Oh, here we go. There we go. And a couple things are going to be important here. First of all, remember, let's always try and line up our origin point where we think it needs to go. So I'm going to compare this with my idle sprite where I have it right behind her toe there. And I think that's exactly where I want that to be for the crouching. Now, we are going to use, much like we use the idle sprite here as the main collision mask for the player, we're going to create a collision mask for our crouching collision. Now, this video will give you some insight on how swapping collision masks can work for different like states or different forms, or whenever I go on to do the branching sort of sequel series to this where I talk about more of a Mario style things like having a small character versus a big character. This will give us a little bit of insight into that, but for now, here's the point. Our crouching code is just going to control, the height of the character, right? So it should be the height of their bounding box or their mask, whatever. Our code currently is not going to be able to handle things like changing the width of our sprite, right? Because if you're standing up against a wall and you crouch, you don't want your crouching hitbox to be wider, so then all of a sudden you're accidentally clipped into a wall. So the first thing we need to make sure that we do is the width of our hitbox needs to actually match the width of our player's idle hitbox. So if we look down here, this is our origin point. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pixels to the left and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pixels to the right. So let's just make sure that we do that here. So I'm going to go to manual and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the width of our player is never going to change, which is important. And now we can just decide whatever we want to do on the height. Obviously, this is already lower, but I think this might feel kind of weird. And I think, for these kind of games, I would like our player to be able to slide under 16 by 16 pixels. So right now it says our sprite height is 20. And right there you can see the bottom is 19. So I'm just going to make the bottom like down to the top was 0 and the bottom is 19 here. So the top is 0. So I'm going to maybe shave off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pixels, maybe 6. I'm going to do it here. Obviously, there's a lot of leftover space here, but it's nice to kind of cheat in the player's favor a little bit, right? So having your hitbox smaller for the player's damage can be beneficial to game feel. But another thing is I made these with the intention of doing a Mario style game. So in that version of the game, I'm going to have the smaller hitbox be based off of the smaller idle sprite of the player, which would look something like this, right? But anyways, the important thing is just make it as tall as you want it to be. And you need to make sure that the width does match the player's idle sprite and that the origin points, match up. Oh, and set an animation speed to whatever you want it to. This doesn't matter because it's just one frame for me, but just set it to whatever you need it to be. And we are ready to rock and roll. Let's go into our player and go into our create event. And I'm going to put this under moving. And we're only going to add one thing here. But, the idea is this is going to be like kind of states. So I'm going to call this state variables. And I'm going to call this crouching and set it equal to false. Now, this isn't necessarily going to be a state machine. It's sometimes I like to kind of do a combination of, actual having legitimate states in things and having additional variables that sort of add a property to a state, right? Like crouching. I don't really want to have something different than the normal movement state. I just want to also either be crouching or not. At least that's how it works in my head. So we're gonna need that, and we're gonna need one more sprite. We're gonna need a crouch sprite. There we go. Crouch sprite, S player crouch. Oh, this word's getting weird to look at now that I've said it and typed it a bunch. Uh-oh, that's gonna bother me. Okay, step event time. So we're gonna wanna do this before we do any of our X movement or any of our movement in general, but after we do our move platform stuff. So I'm gonna say this is crouching right here. And the first thing I'm gonna hear is say transition to crouch. And then we're going to have our manual version of that, right? So our intended input, because we're also gonna have it work automatically like I mentioned in the last video. So manual is pretty easy. We just wanna say if our down key and we have a floor platform, then we can crouch, right? That makes sense. Just if we're standing on the ground and we press the down button, we wanna crouch. And since our sprite is the same width and it's just shorter, that means in any scenario where we're not crouching already, we can set our crouching to true because our hitbox will only get smaller. It won't grow, so we don't have to compensate for anything or check and make sure that we can do things. So I'm even gonna tab this one out one more time. Again, sorry, I don't know if this is a real method of code organization. Unfortunately, it just makes so much sense to me. So I'm sorry if it looks weird to you or if it's a habit you're picking up and other people will make fun of you for it. And so the next part of this is going to be change collision mask. We're gonna go ahead and change it up here. So if we are crouching, then let's change our mask index to be our crouching sprite, right? Because we want all of our code after this to take that into consideration. Now I'm going to say transition out of crouching. And this is also going to be the manual version. And basically, if we're not pressing the down button, we want to uncrouch, right? If we're not holding down, we want to uncrouch. So here's what we need to do. First, we need to check if we're not pressing our down key. Good. Then we need to check if I can uncrouch. And here's a really easy way to, whenever you're swapping between mask indexes, to check if it would be easily possible. First, we'll swap our mask index back to being our regular hitbox, so our idle sprite. Or again, if you decided to make separate variables called mask sprite, and you could make another variable called crouch mask sprite or something like that, then make sure you're using those. But remember, right now our crouch sprite is our smaller one and our idle sprite is the one used for all of our other collisions. So first we're gonna swap back to our idle sprite. Then we're just gonna check if there's not a wall in the way. So if not, place meeting with a solid wall, then that means we're good and we don't need to be crouching anymore, right? So change our mask back to our regular collision mask. And if there's not a wall in the way after we do that, then we can just set crouching to false and our mask is already back to its regular one. So we're good there. However, so we can say uncrouch if no solid wall in the way. But if there is a wall in the way, so otherwise, you could say go back to crouching mask index if we can't uncrouch. So if there was a wall in the way, then crouching remains true, and we need to set our mask index back to the crouching sprite because we unset it up here. And also we can add a check here, and we can only do this check if we're already crouching anyways, right? There's no need to do all of this stuff if we're not already in the crouching state or whatever. So cool. So now we can actually test this, but just for the sake of visuals, we can go down to where we're doing our sprite control at the very bottom here, and we can add in crouching. And I like to just add this at the very end. So if crouching, and I can say sprite index equals my crouching sprite. And I like to put this at the end because, well, I'll show you in a second. Just remember that, this order of operations matters. So it doesn't matter what any of this stuff is, as long as we're crouching, it'll set us to the crouching sprite. And then finally, under our setting the collision mask area, we can just say if crouching mask index equals crouch sprite. And it's important, we've already set our mask index at the very top, so it'll always work for all of our collisions and stuff like that. However, we want to make sure that we keep our mask index as the crouching sprite at the end of the frame if we are crouching, because things like if we have enemies that are, going to hit the player and stuff like that, or anything else that needs to interact with the player's correct collision box, any other object, we'll just need to make sure that at all times our player is at the correct mask index. So let's test this real quick. Oh boy, I forgot about all this. Okay, well, look at that. Okay, so it's a little funny, but the crouching seems to be working. And so like here, that pushes me down, but if I'm crouching right here, yeah, it has to get way closer to push me down. So that means that my mask index has in fact been changed. So let's see, this should crush me. Yep. But it won't if I'm ducking. Yeah, so it works. So we can still move and we can still jump, which is a little bit odd, but that's okay. We're just making sure the crouching works and that the collisions mask work right now. And who knows, you know, you in your game, you may also want, you know, it to work like this. You can walk around while crouched and stuff like that. But I'm just going to show you the methods to stop this from happening and do one more thing, right? So if I stand here, this thing will crush me and my player won't attempt to crouch out of the way. We can make it to where that does happen, to where the player will do that if they detect that they're about to get crushed by something automatically. Which again, you may or may not want that in your game, but it's a good thing to know how to do. So let's do that. And let's also show how to not have the player keep moving while crouching or something like that, right? So exit. First of all, let's figure out that automatic crouching to get out of the way of a wall that's coming downwards. And if we want, we can also make it to where if the player jumps, they should never be crouched. And again, that's something you may or may not want. For example, in the Mario games, in the new Super Mario Brothers games, Mario can jump while crouched, and that's just a part of that game and how it works. So this is all up to you which things you want to include, but it's nice to just put them in here and then maybe comment them out so you can just swap them back in if you want. Just, you know, test how you want your character to move and stuff. But so we have our transition to crouch, we have the manual transition, but now we can have the forced/automatic transition. So I'm going to say if we are on the ground, or if instance exists floor platform, these should always pretty much be in the same boat here, right? And since we're not getting any actual information from my floor plat, this could probably also be changed to if we are on ground, you know? Same thing, pretty much, doesn't matter. In fact, that's probably a little bit better to do because then we're not using a function to check for something. So you can change that up there. Most of the time, whenever we check for if instance exists my floor platform, it's because we need to get information from that floor platform. But right now, we're just checking if we're on the ground. So we can say, if we're on the ground and there is a wall on top of us, right? Because at this point, remember, we've done our get out of the solid movement platforms and all that stuff. But remember, that's why we made this final little movement here a little bit different. That's why with the wall coming down on top of us, we don't want to push ourselves into the ground floor below us if there is one. We basically just want to get crushed, right? Because now that we know that the player won't get forced downwards by that wall if they're already standing on the ground, or, you know, at least on solid ground, then we can just say crouching equals true. So this won't stop us from getting crushed, obviously, but basically it just means give ourselves a better chance to no longer be crushed by this thing. And again, if it's something coming down to the top of us, then this will very likely get us out of the way, unless the wall has already moved all the way into our body, in which case it's a very fast moving wall and we'll get crushed anyway, so it doesn't matter. So we can test that really quick if we want to. So this bottom one, yeah, look at that. Player automatically crouches. I'm not pressing anything. It never flashed blue, so we never, by the end of our step event, have detected that we've been crushed or anything like that, so good stuff. And then we still get crushed if it should crush us, right? So, cool. Very nice. Next, we can do, much like we did the manual transition out of crouching, we can do automatic uncrouch when in the air. Again, I wouldn't do this for something like a Mario game, but just do the code, test it out, and then you can comment it out if you don't want it, and then comment it back in if you do want it. So we can say if not on ground, right? Then we can actually basically just do the same thing here. We can use the same code. That was the same for up here, so if we really wanted to, we could just copy this code, put it here, or you could not have it be a whole separate thing of copy and pasted code and just do this. You could say if we are crouching and we're either not pressing the down key or we are not on the ground, right? So this will do the same thing. Like I said, we could technically do the same thing here and reorganize this. So we can say if we are on the ground and we are either pressing the down key or there's a place meeting with a wall, then we could do this. You know, let's just do that. That makes more sense. I was going to have it for the sake of having manual and automatic being separated, but hold on. We're just adding new conditions, right? So I can say manual equals not down key, and then I'll say automatic equals not on ground. For this one, I can say manual equals down key and automatic equals wall collision. So yeah, again, same. It's the same code for each of these conditions. It's just one of these is a manual activation and one of these is automatic. There we go. So let's see how that works. So first, I'm just going to check our old code and make sure it still works. Yep, it does, because we just... Yep, so that's working fine. And now, if I'm crouching and I jump, yep, my player uncrouches. So I'm holding the down button this whole time, and my player is uncrouching, so great. And that's also good because, let's do a little test like this. I'm gonna change this room around for a second. Okay, here we go. So now I can get in these spaces, and you can see my player can still jump, but they stay crouched if they can't uncrouch. And then if I'm not pressing the down button and I walk out, this is more like a Metroid thing, right? Like like a morph ball, where like my control is exactly the same. It looks like a Mario player crouching, but you know, just goes to show you how similar games are. Just the visuals just trick you. But yeah, so the jumping still works down here, but I just don't automatically uncrouch like if I did over here. So nice. That's about that. Lastly, there's a couple ways that we can stop the player from moving while crouched if that's truly what we desire. So we can go to our X movement. For one, we could just do this. We can move under where we get our direction and just say, if we're crouching, then set our move direction to be 0. So basically just don't take any more left and right inputs, and that would look like this. So yeah, whenever I crouch, I can't move anymore. I also can't turn left and right at all, even while I'm crouching, which again is like, say something in a Mario game, you could do that. If you still wanted the player to be able to turn, you could just simply put that after getting the face direction, right? So get our direction and then use the move direction variable to get facing left or right, and then no movement while crouching. So if we did that, then, you know, we can now do this, but we won't move anymore. If there's parts of your code that reference this move dir and you don't want to hard set move direction to 0, you could just go under your X speed here and say if crouching X speed equals 0, and that'll basically do exactly what the other one did. It just now our movement direction variable is not changing, so we can still reference the intent of our movement direction, things like that. Wait, let's say stop X speed if crouching. Or you can make a variable, hold on, wait, one more thing. Or you could do something like this. You could say crouch move speed, and let's just set that equal to like a really low number, so like, or a pretty low number, like 0.5. And so if we're crouching, instead of our X speed equal our move direction times our movement speed, we can do speed equals move direction times our crouch move speed. So we can still scoot. So if you did have like an animation where your player is crouching and walking, you could do this. You could animate it the same way that you would, or that we did with the idle sprite. So yeah, so you could do all these things. You might be asking, I say Mr. Payton, and I'll say, Mr. Payton wasn't my father's name. However, you can just call me Big Dog. And you say, okay, I'm probably not going to do that. Payton. I say, okay, yeah, what do you need? I want to be able to do things like running and then crouch and slide, or, you know, just have my crouching slow down my X speed instead of doing that. Well, that's what the whole next series is for. Like I said in the beginning, this is a basis series for ubiquitous elements of pretty much any 2D platformer kind of game that you could want, I think, for the most part. And so, first of all, I'm just going to check and make sure that I've got no different code here. Did you like that? That was a little impression. I don't remember where it came from, but legend says there's a people who talk like that. Yeah, no, I think that's everything. First of all, I'm just going to go ahead and set this back to 0, just so I can have a very clean project here. But the next series that I'm planning to do is going to be talking about taking this really solid, basically just collision engine for a 2D platformer and turning it into something a little bit more like a momentum-based kind of Mario thing. And that will include things like building up speeds, sliding, varying jump height based on your input speed, all that kind of stuff. And then eventually I'm going to do a series that doesn't build on that Mario series, but it builds off of, yet again, this series right here, this little engine we have. And it'll talk about turning it more into a Metroidvania, which actually, we're pretty similar to a Metroidvania right now, the way we control and all that stuff. Because Metroidvanias normally have pretty digital movement, and it normally comes with the different abilities where your movement gets a little bit more complex. So it would just be things like adding attacks, certain abilities, and mostly showing you how to do things like how to unlock abilities, warping between rooms, keeping track of your game's progress, all that kind of stuff. Ways to make like maps, like mini maps or things like that. Maybe at some point we'll talk about a running gun. I don't know. The point is, this is a great series to have because it can be a great jumping off point for a lot of different things. If you ask me, this series is the 70% of a good game. It's that last 30% of programming work that makes the game very expressive and changes what the game is, but this is just the good basis. Anyways, I'm going to pause my recording and I'm going to mess around with this for a minute and make sure I haven't left anything out of this series because it was big. And if I seemingly didn't forget anything, then we're gonna go to the outro. Outro time! Congratulations! You freaking did it, kid! You got to the end. As I said a second ago, the end of this series. And there will be more to come. But congratulations! You've completed Payton's definitely collegiate level, super professional, very highly rated platformer course. So, tell every when you're looking for a job, just tell them you did this. No, but seriously, that's awesome. I'm proud of you. This is the final time I'll say it. Look at that view count. Now look at the view count of the first video. There's something to be said about that. But yeah, don't leave yet because there's a couple things I want to mention. The first things I gotta mention, if this series helped you out, please, feel free to help me out on Patreon if you want. My upload schedule for videos and series tends to normally be like periods where I don't upload for a bit, and then something like this where I will upload a series all in very close proximity to each other when it's totally finished. So that tends to be how I work. So if you want to support me, it would mostly just be supporting me and then eventually videos. So if that's something you're interested in, then check that out. Otherwise, play Starcross Starcade Special. It is coming out in 2024, so you can either wishlist it right now or play it if it's already out. That would be just a massive, massive deal for me. And then also check out my other game, Rose of Starcross. There's a demo for that. You can download it, all that stuff. You know this. You've heard me say it a bunch of times, but I have to. Otherwise, I feel like I'm being dumb. Oh, and of course, subscribing and things is very, very good to do if and you feel like it. But the important things that I wanted to mention that were more about the content of what we have here. Like I said, this is done. Now, throughout the recording process and editing process especially, there were a couple times I noticed a couple bugs. Basically, as far as I'm aware, as of recording this, which is like the day it goes up pretty much, I've ironed out pretty much all the issues that I've seen, and there was really just 2 that I didn't catch on my own. One of which was included in a video that a Patreon member found, and so I was able to address in this final YouTube version for episode 7, I believe. And there was one more very tiny kind of half issue in episode 2 that was only found after it went up on YouTube. Nothing's really broken, but it's just kind of weird thing. So if you haven't, go back to part 2 and check the top comment, and I detail that issue and how to fix it. And like I said, it's very much a half issue, and it's extremely easy to fix. No code is even added. It's literally just putting one line of code after another line of code instead of having it be before. So check that out after this. But otherwise, yeah, I'm going to do a channel update very soon after this video goes up, because I'm almost at 15,000 subs, which is crazy. Thank you, you little legends, every one of you. I don't care if it's cliche to be like, wow, a subscriber number. Yeah, I'm excited about it. You know, I don't sound like it. That's because I'm tired, all right? I'm very happy to be done with this series. It was very hard to make. But the point is, I will be doing a channel update video, which will include... I'm not going to say an ETA because I never do that anymore because I'm very dumb and I'm very bad at ETAs, but I'm going to talk a little bit about my plans for the like spin-off series to this one, which is, you know, like the Mario type series and the Metroid type series and all that kind of stuff. I'll ramble. It'll be a ramble like my outros normally are, but it'll just be a long ramble because it will be a dedicated video to that. So if you want information on that, watch that. And now I can finally do the updated Patreon shoutouts because we're on the last episode, which means I can give a very special thanks to all of the Star Gamers who joined while this series was being made, and the ones who have been here forever also. So this is gonna be a huge thank you. So thank you very much to Nixionic, Null, Caden Brightwell, Joseph Sandlin, Midnight, AOGO, Christian Donovan, Jazzy, DT, Richard DeLuca, Legolas, Maya, Roble, Crazy Poo Chucker, Harrison, Joshua, Ruben Leoville, Mikael Alexander, David Rivas, NerdBoutique.com, Carlos Acosta, John Brown, Pixel, Frog Salt, Marco Romo, Howie, Andreas Pramel, Bill Lottie, Nick Lee, C, Mancat, Patrick, Yeskrit Brar, Dean Blackborough, Micah Smith, Matt Lumens, Jonah Newman, Peter Diaz, BB Samurai, Merson, El Sato, Robo Ruiz, Charlie, GameMaker, Darius Akin, Brent Hand, Praxi Quack, Tomb of the Unknown GameMaker, Callum Bailey, Steve Bernardson, Kale Ledev, or Kale Ledev, I don't know, Kendar, Seth Small, Jorge Alcacer, Ben West, Quinn Hill, Rory, Scott Jones, Schmidt, Happy Face TV, Nick Regkick, El Sadig Bahar, Black Swan, Is, and Same HH, Sameh, I don't know. I probably got a few of those wrong, but wowzers! Thank you guys so much. I can't believe how many people were willing to chip in and help out on the Patreon during this series. Like, it kind of blew my mind. In the wise words of Tommy Tallarico, my mother is very proud. So thank you so much. It really means the world to me and is just a huge, huge deal. And that thanks extends to everyone on the Patreon and everyone watching this right now. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoy the system that you have. And I guess on top of everything else, I hope you have a good day. So yeah, I'll quit my yapping. See you next time, everybody.